Well, we started out the day with the intention of trying to get rid of a little bit of the snow that's accumulated inside of this corral and get a little bit better access to the front of the shelter there where the snow has come off the roof. It's a fairly warm day, and the accumulated and tromped down snow is a little bit softer and easier to work with. Since we have kidding season coming in about 2 to 3 weeks, we wanted to try to get some of this snow cleared out and make a nice easy access for the tractor to be able to deliver a fresh bale of straw up here and refresh the bedding in preparation for that kidding season. So after the first hour or two spent poking around the snow piles, looking for which one has the bucket for this loader, we finally found it and got it on instead of the forks so that we could start clearing out some of this really compacted snow and moving this feeder before taking the loader off to put the snowblower back on. So once we got those couple of things taken care of, it was time to get out of there and go down to get the snowblower exchanged. This loader is a quick attach loader and comes off pretty quickly. And the snowblower is kind of a quick attach snowblower as well and goes on pretty quickly. But nobody else has helped me do that before, so we're going to give a little bit of a lesson in both of those processes, just so that the others have a little bit more knowledge base about what that process is. And if they help me in the future, they can anticipate things a little better and maybe one day be able to just change it out by themselves if they needed to. With just a little bit of effort, we've got it all swapped over and the snowblower checked and ready to go throw snow. Ola hops up to catch a ride going up, and we decided to blow the little bit of snow that's accumulated on the hillside here as we go up. But as we wrap the corner, the tractor makes a little bit of a chug from the steepness, so I decided better turn around, get down there and get some fuel in it so that we're ready to go without any interruptions. A quick little cleanup effort on the side edge of the driveway, and then it's time for a pit stop to get it fueled up. This tractor's pretty fuel efficient for the most part, and even if it's working really hard, like blowing snow for 8 hours all day, it still only goes through about 7 or 8 gallons of fuel in that kind of effort. But now it's ready to go. The only reason that we're trying to snow blow some of this is because there's several layers of snow in there, and the tractor tends to want to climb up on the snow and then collapse under the weight deeper in. And I didn't want to run the risk of getting high centered or getting the tractor stuck in any way. So I thought it would be best if we at least took the top 10 or 12 inches of snow off of there so that it wouldn't be high centered at all. And then we could also blow out this snow that's accumulated from the roof, just to make it easy so when I come up with a big bale of straw, we can set it right in and be able to spread it around for the animals for some fresh bedding. My batteries died and I didn't realize it, but we did finish getting things prepared. We didn't end up putting the straw in this weekend. We decided to wait one more weekend before putting it in. But we did get the feeder back, cleaned out, and a fresh bale of hay brought up to feed before heading into the barn to keep working on that for the rest of the afternoon and evening. Once we got all that taken care of on the farm, Ola had to go down and start getting ready to go to work. She had to work a night shift this night. So the boys and I were going to hang out in the barn and try to get as much work done as we could. We started out with Logan and I doing some cleanup, and then when Everest got in here, he got started unboxing and assembling some scaffolding that we purchased. The other day when I had gone into town to pick up materials to start framing the stairs and compressor room, I saw these scaffolds sitting there marked down for clearance, and I almost picked them up then, but I didn't. 2 days later, when Ola went by to pick up some materials, she saw them and they were on clearance for $120 per section. So she bought 4 of them so that we could really get going on this insulation and for the drywall, just to make our lives a little bit easier and a whole lot safer. It turns out the manufacturer was coming out with a new model that had an updated platform plank with a pass-through hinge. That's the only difference, and that's the only reason that they were on clearance, is to make room for the new model. The new model cost $300, so to get them for less than half, I was very pleased, and we were real excited to have these in the shop. What a difference they were going to make for us. We had anticipated that we would have to rent some kind of a scissor lift and try to get it up here so that we could have it for doing the drywall. And we just were going to make everything work with the ladders and the plank for the insulation. But getting such a good deal on these scaffolds, we're able to get the insulation going, and we're pretty sure we're going to be just fine doing the drywall this way. And then with the scaffolds assembled and Ola off to work, Everest and Logan worked together to try to get as much of the insulation done in the ceiling, while Logan and I try to work on getting as much done with the stair treads and the door as we possibly can. Everest had decided that having the two scaffolds set up next to each other made such a nice wide platform that his comfort level was really good, and he was just fine to keep going with the insulation so that I could focus on more of the finer carpentry and some of the other finishings that I needed to do. So Logan was there to help move the scaffolds around for Everest, hand him insulation as needed, and then also help me out with anything I needed as an extra pair of hands as well. Everest was moving across that ceiling so quickly it didn't take long to start really trapping some heat, and he decided it was way too warm up next to the ceiling to have his hoodie on anymore. Even though he would have preferred to have it to keep him covered from some of the insulation, he still didn't mind, and he'd rather have his coat off than be all sweaty. So while he was moving like a machine across this ceiling, I was working on getting the door cut across that corner so that it would fit underneath the stair stringer. I had laid out my angle cut across the jamb and the door. Now there needed to be a gap between the jamb and the door on that angle so that there was proper clearance, and it needed to be a little bit extra so that I can skin that top edge of the door so that it has a finished edge. But before I made my cuts, I wanted to make sure that the door and the jamb didn't move with relation to each other, so I put a small shim between the door and the jamb to maintain the proper gap, and then I ran a screw through the jamb into the door to hold it in place so that the reference stayed the same. The door cut turned out just right, and with the new bit of door casing across that angle, everything was ready to get it installed, shimmed, and plumbed exactly as I wanted it. So while I worked on getting everything just right that way, Everest and Logan started moving the boards out of the way so that Everest could get over across the front of the building near the door. There was just a handful more pieces he needed in that row to get everything buttoned up, with the exception of the cut pieces on the tail ends of those rows along the wall to finish everything off. We ended out the night with most of the ceiling done, with just those last cut pieces to put up, the door put in, and all the insulation in on the walls for the compressor room. All in all, it was a lot of really good work accomplished for about 5 hours in total that we spent up there. Earlier the next morning, the boys and I came up to the barn to get started working and leave the house quiet so that Ola could rest after her night shift. And after the amount of work that Everest did with the ceiling insulation yesterday, we knew that we would not need to be in our insulated gear to be up there and be comfortable. So we all came up in just jeans and a light hoodie that we could easily shed that layer when it got too warm. So Everest started off finishing up the insulation in the ceiling the way that he had left off, while I got started getting the subfloor down for the landing and then getting these stair treads going. I decided I wanted to start from the top and work my way down the stairs, because the sooner I could get stair treads up high, the sooner Everest could get a ladder over the stair treads to finish up those bits of insulation that wouldn't work with the scaffold and would be hard to reach from a ladder away from the stairs. Now when I cut these stair stringers, I cut the rise to be 7 1/8 inch. And these boards that I bought for the toe kicks are 7 1/4 inch. So my first thought was, well, that's no big deal. I'll just use my chisel and I'll notch off a little 1/8 of an inch so that it can set a little lower and it'll be just fine. Ultimately, I came to find out that chiseling those out was taking me a lot longer than I had in my mind. So I decided that's not worth the effort for that. Let's lay these out, cut them all, then we stack them up, mark them, and I'll use my trim router set with an end mill bit, and I'll just hog these suckers out one after another, and we'll get this done real efficiently and really quickly. So I ended up setting the end mill bit at 3/16 inch depth, which is about a 1/16 overkill, but I wanted just a little bit of wiggle room because I didn't need those toe kicks to rest on the stair stringers. I just needed them to come down to the top so that when I put the stair tread on, that 1.5 inch extra is going to overlap, but everything will be up nice and tight and look really nice. Now that I have all the toe kicks installed, and I had Everest come back through and staple all of the insulation that I had put in the compressor room walls, I'm ready to start cutting and fitting these stair treads to get glued and screwed into place. With the subflooring down on the landing up there, Everest was able to get at least 3 more of those rows of insulation installed while he waited for me to get a few more stair treads in place. He needed that so that there was some place for the ladder to land so that he could be able to go up and get the last handful of pieces put in place. He was still moving quicker than I could with the process I was on. So after a little bit of dawdling around waiting for me, he and Logan decided that there was still plenty of time to go, so they were going to go down to the house, make some lunch, check on Mom, see how things were, and then come back to see if I had enough stair treads that they could finally keep going and get finished what they needed to do, rather than continuing to wait on me. So what I'm doing with these stair treads is I'm marking them out, and then the way that I'm fastening them, because when I've done 2x12 treads in the past, if they're not screwed down really well, they tend to cup as they dry out, and they'll want to pull and lift, and I generally like to glue and screw them down, but it's too cold for my wood glue to work, and I'm all out of like regular construction adhesive, but what I'm using is the expanding foam. It's essentially, there's a couple of different construction adhesives on the market that I've seen used specifically for subfloor, and they're basically the same as expanding foam. But man, that stuff's so sticky and it glues so hard once it's screwed down. I just need something to help with the bond. So I'm actually gluing it down with the expanding foam, just laying a thin little bead across the tops of everything. And then I'm laying one toward the top edge of the back of the stair, the toe edge of the stair, where it comes up in contact with the toe kick. And then I'm putting the expanding foam here in the gap between the end, any variation or gap between the wall and it. I'm flushing the stair treads on this outside edge, and I'm undecided yet whether I'm going to leave the stair tread ends exposed and stain them, or whether I'm going to run the plywood the bangboard plywood up over it as a covering. I'm inclined to leave it exposed just because I think the wood grain ends and the side grain of the stair runner looks pretty neat, and with a nice little stain on there, it should look good. So I may keep it that way. But the expanding foam is going to fill the gap, and then when I come back through with either if I stain it, then if I stain the stairs, then I'll fill the joints and anything like that with a sawdust and wood filler kind of combination that'll go in there and it'll accept stain. If I paint it, then I'll just hit those edges and beads with painter's caulk to give it a nice sealed surface, so that I don't want the dirt to go into the grooves and be caught into the gap, into the little groove and gap from the transition and stuff on the surface. I am recessing these GRK screws down in. I'm using my little spiral bit and I'm drilling these down, and then I'm running those screws in, and they're going in probably 3/8 of an inch or so below the surface. And then I can come back in later with my plug cutter, just refine the hole and fill the hole right over the top of the screw. I'll just put a wood plug right into it and finish them out that way, most likely. So anyway, I've got my screw spacing all figured out by now, so I've kind of got a good little system down of where to mark everything, and for my screws, and for a shop, stairs, definitely not a necessary step, but I got to put the screws in anyway. And if they're evenly spaced, they look nice whether or not you see them. So that's my little spiral bit with the countersink. The ones on this toe kick edge, I'm putting them in at a slight angle just to help suck the stair in tight to the toe kick. And with a little bit of the overhang and the drill, it's hard to get right up against it and get straight. So if it's a little bit of an angle, it's easier to get the screw gun in to screw it in. This other one with the toe kick in the wall, I'm putting it at a slight angle both directions because as I come in with it, I'm wanting to stay away from the wall and the toe kick so that I can get the screw gun in as well. And then there's a couple of the stairs where the tread had a little split somewhere near the center in the grain. And so I put a screw on either side of the split so that split will pull down and hold, and I don't have that split continue and one side try to lift as the wood curves and cures. I'm also trying to make sure that I've got it so that they're going to cup at a downward angle. It's not a big deal if the center of the tread starts to flex and cup up, bow up a little bit over time. That's less of a problem than if the front or the toe edge tries to lift and you end up with a big gap and you end up with something to catch your toe on because it's an uneven spacing. So I'm putting them cut this way so that as they cure and dry, if they pull against the screws hard enough, it'll just stand up and they'll still have a flat, stable stair. Now I'm going to start my screws in. And I don't know why, but I just started a long time ago when I've got a bunch of screws to put in. I find it's easiest to make sure they're all lined up the same way, because then I can just cup them in my fingers with the tips just a little bit past. And it doesn't matter which screw head I hit with my screw gun. When I push down, that one sticks out and it's easy to identify. It goes right in the hole. And it's just fast for putting the screws in. just like that. I'll go stick this one on. I'm also putting one screw in between each stair runner into the toe kick, into the top of the toe kick. And I've just found that the toe kick just doesn't get loose then. It helps hold everything really solid. In the past, I've even gone in on the backside of the stair tread and put a screw in between the stringers into the stair tread through the toe kick. There's probably a lot of overkill there, but should be nice stairs. Logan made his way back sooner than Everest, but by the time he got back, I did have enough stair treads down that he was able to get the ladder in place up on the stairs and finish the last 2 or 3 pieces of insulation that needed to go up to finally have the entire ceiling fully capped and ready to trap all the heat. Anytime I enter into the next phase of a construction project like this, and I have a fairly large stack of materials, it feels really nice to see that stack of materials go away as that phase starts to wrap up. So after a couple of days like this, where we were able to spend several hours at a time and really put our heads down and go to work, it sure feels nice to see that difference in what we accomplished and what's coming along with this total project. To have the entire ceiling fully capped with its initial layer of insulation sure is a relieving feeling, knowing that we're able to trap all of the heat in here that we put into that stove. And just like that, with the last stair tread in, the air compressor room framed, insulated, and everything ready to go there, I'm getting really anxious to finish up the rest of the insulation, get that garage door installed, and start getting everything ready to bring in some drywall.